Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. The calendar turns to December, and you know what that means. Get out your calculators. It's tiebreaker month.
What's up? My name is Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings, and I think we should just leave playoff positioning up to this college football committee.
Hey, this is Arif Hassan of the White Lev Substack. I, too, suddenly care about college football for the 1 week of the year that I ever care about it.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. KOC is going to ponder a quarterback decision this week. He's mulling things over. Okay? Think about it.
Jesus.
Don't say ponder on this show. Minnesota football.
Down the hall.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
Welcome in on a Monday morning to the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. So glad you've joined us. You met the Lukes, you met Arif. I'm Sam Ekstrom, talking Vikings for the next hour or so. Everydayers, thank you for watching all the content here, whether it's on video on Locked On Sports Minnesota or in this show's case, on audio on the Locked On Vikings audio feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on the SiriusXM app, Amazon Fire, Roku, and now the 24/7 YouTube live stream right here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I lobbied for them to just play this show on a loop for 24/7. They do include other shows as well, like Luke Braun, for instance, on Locked On Vikings, or Luke Inman, the postcaster general, reacting to Wolves games as they just keep winning and winning and winning and winning. But on today's Minnesota Football Party, long-term quarterback discussion. We'll revisit that here out of the bye week. A good chance to take stock of where the Vikings are at and where we want them to go. How about the Brian Flores defense, still ranked 8th in the league? How did we get here to this insane spot where the defense is better than the offense? We'll look ahead to the Las Vegas Raiders and react to what we saw in Week 13, a week in which none of us won our parlays. We'll touch on that as well. But I want everybody to know that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Arif Hassan, what's up, man?
Hi. Hey, hello.
Hi.
Why am I?
Why not? There's only 3 of us. Why not?
When I watch the league on Sundays, you get more of a chance to think about just like big picture storylines, trends, and what have you, when I'm not tunnel visioned on the Vikings. And you look around this league, man, and I think to myself, whenever a team tries the bridge quarterback route, it usually goes badly. And whenever teams kind of commit to a direction, these early, these first round picks who get given the keys, seems like it's working out more often than not right now in the league. And I'm wondering where you stand on sort of the correct direction the Vikings need to go at QB going forward. Who's a template for the Vikings, if you will?
I mean, Geno Smith is the template, I guess, but
that's the bridge. That's the bridge angle. So let me use Love, for instance, Arif. I still think that the Packers are in a terrible spot. I think that you waited too long. I don't think that sitting your quarterback for 3 years is the approach you want to take in today's NFL. I think they've got now their hands tied, wondering, well, is he good? Is he not good? He's 500 quarterback. What do we pay him? Do we have to commit to him for 3 years now? I think that's a horrible spot to be in. I think that is example A.
They don't think so, by the way. Very much.
Oh, they're confident in their direction. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that direction at all in today's NFL climate. But that's a lesson that I would take from it. You look at the good quarterback situations and the bad quarterback situations. Who do you want to emulate in terms of what approach they took? Luke Braun, what do you think?
For me, it's always been the Bills for this. The way that they got Josh Allen, which was they fell in love with the guy 2 years before he came out. They had that guy. They aggressively traded up to get him when it was time. And I think that allowed them also to be patient when that guy was struggling. He had a really bad rookie year. He wasn't even that good his second year.
Catastrophically bad rookie year.
Yeah. Would have been really easy to look at that the same way we're looking at Carolina with Bryce Young right now. And anybody you ask, you go, they pick the wrong guy instead of Stroud. the Carolina Panthers are going to have to be a lot more patient than that organization has been in the last few years with Bryce
last
Young.
few weeks.
Yeah. So I think kind of having your guy and then knowing to be patient with him, I think whether or not that guy starts year one, if it is a rookie, is a little bit more of a moot point if you're willing to be patient. The way that can ruin things is if that dude's bad for a year and a half and then you bench him and you decide you're going to move on. Like, yeah, that's a catastrophe. But hey, if he's bad for 2 years and you stick with him and then the third year he breaks out like Josh Allen, like that's the kind of thing that, especially with super athletic, high ceiling guys, that's the kind of thing you can get away with. But really, and I know this isn't a satisfying answer, but it is the answer, hit on the pick. You have to be right with your evaluation, or hit on, the trade if you're going to trade for Kyler Murray or do whatever. You have to be right and get a guy that's good. Everything else is window dressing. And I know that's not like satisfying, but that is the case. The
right,
Jordan Love, let him sit for 3 years thing might work if he's good. And if Jordan Love isn't good, it didn't work. And that's all it ever comes down to. If he's awesome, if Jordan Love is the next Aaron Rodgers, Packers fans will not care at all that they didn't get 3 years of his rookie contract, just like they didn't care with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, so there's two things I want to say to that. One, there's an element of I agree with a good chunk of that, right? Like, can you imagine if the Cardinals had just stuck with Josh Rosen? Like, hey, we got to stick this out, man. You got to ride your horses. It's like, no, it's like you got to like the guy that you have, and they very clearly did not. But second, it's not like that simple, right? Like, you can construct a reality where Jordan Love is good if he gets to play right away and not good if he's benched for 3 years, right? Like, those are two different Jordan Loves. And I think it is fair to say that those two approaches will impact the evaluation going forward, or the other way, right? Like, maybe he wouldn't have been good if he had played right away. Maybe he's good.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
right?
like, he was, by all reports, a mess for the first couple of years. If he had played right away, I don't know if that would have stunted his development necessarily. I mean, I do think that happened to Justin Fields, so that certainly happens. But it certainly would have soured him in the eyes of the organization, and I don't think we'd be in year 4 seeing them stick it out with Jordan Love. Like, I think that's right. The advantage.
But it's just that, like, when you draft a guy, it's not suddenly the universe stamps good or bad on that guy, right? There's a development path.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's just the kind of the thing I wanted to push back on. Is that, like, hey, maybe
sure.
you did.
And I call that part of hitting on the pick, is you also have to develop him correctly. You need the quarterback to be good. And if he's not good, you failed. And it doesn't matter what process you took.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go through here and just top of my head, write some of these quarterback transitions down. Just for example, Lions, okay, had Matt Stafford, traded a first-round pick for Jared Goff. Grade, I don't know, what do you give that? A B minus. Ravens had Joe Flacco, used the 32nd pick on Lamar Jackson. A minus. The 2 or 3 top ones here, you already mentioned Seahawks, Russell Wilson, traded for Drew Lock and then signed veteran Geno Smith. That's got to be an A plus, one of the best trades we've seen. Texans traded picks, used the number 2 pick on CJ Stroud. That looks like an A right now. And then outside the obvious of just like, okay, the Chiefs, can't call it luck, obviously, but okay, you hit on Patrick Mahomes, or Chargers moving on from Phillip Rivers, drafted in the first round, Justin Herbert. That looks like an A minus, B plus-ish right now. I think both you guys are right. I think the point is, for all these teams, their decision and direction they wanted to transition to was massively dictated at the time on their perception of, we're in total rebuild mode, let's strip it all down to the studs like the Bears and Ryan Poles did, or if they thought they were still a competitive team and roster and they were just a quarterback away. So yeah, I think Arif's right. Like, there's no magic formula, obviously, that you're just going to implement. And I think Luke's right too, in the fact that you got to be patient. You got to commit and put all your chips into developing and kind of progressing that guy, assuming it is a young player, a rookie quarterback. And hitting on your pick, I mean, yeah, it starts right there. So it sounds so simple, but clearly it's insanely complex, and there's a lot of different variables that go into each equation. And each team, I think, is kind of uniquely different when it comes to how they should approach that. Vikings, I mean, we're going to talk about this conversation for the next 6 months.
Yeah, and one of my mottos in covering sports is progress is not linear. And you look at some of these quarterbacks, and some of them show you the best version of themselves right away. As a rookie, maybe year 2. and then they drop off. Josh Allen, like that's a great example of someone who seemed to kind of peak very early and either plateaued or even dipped a little bit. You don't always know. Jalen Hurts was super ordinary his first year. Was decent his second year. He was a little more linear until his third year where he really took off. So those are all the variables that you're looking at when you think about the quarterback future of the Minnesota Vikings. But I watched a lot of college football this week. This is a big college football week for me, and I've gotten a little more into it just in the month of November. Some pretty good options out there, man. I mean, watching the Oregon-Washington game on Friday night, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. J.J. McCarthy is not, I don't think he's a first-round guy, but I think he's a good quarterback. There's so many good options. Caleb Williams, unbelievable.
Quinn Ewers. Yeah.
And he's eligible, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's drafted. Yeah. So
yeah, they got young Manning waiting in the wings there, ready to get on the field.
Right.
Surprised he hasn't decided to transfer.
Yeah.
Well, if Ewers is leaving though.
Yeah. Shedeur Sanders probably not going to come out, but you look up any mock draft.
I mean, if you believe his dad, he's not going to come out. But who
right? Well,
who knows? But
if you're Shedeur, I'm sure Shedeur is making more coming back to Colorado than he would as a mid-round quarterback, probably, with a chance to improve his stock. I feel like it makes financial sense now for him to stay.
I think another year of college is very, very good for his pro chances.
Yeah, if they give him an offensive line, sure.
Yeah, they need that O-line big time. Interesting to see what they do with the transfer portal. Did you mention Jaden Daniels as well from LSU?
How's their committing going?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Minnesota Vikings defense is top 10 in the league going into the final 5 games of the season. Let's dive into that. Kevin Seifert wrote a very good article about this topic. But first, a word from BetterHelp and Luke Braun.
Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy online, made easy. If you're thinking about getting into therapy, that can be sort of an intimidating thing, especially if the first person you end up calling or whatever doesn't give you a good experience. A lot of people will think that that's the way that therapy goes and then never think about it again. They just think that's what therapy is and it's not for me and I'm done with the whole thing. But I strongly encourage you to try other people, and BetterHelp can help you get set up with a lot of other people. And try, and some on for size, try consults with a lot of other people until you find somebody that fits you and your needs and what you actually need from therapy. Give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
All right, moving on. Minnesota Vikings defense currently ranked 8th in points against in the NFL. Kevin Seifert wrote a great story about Brian Flores' scheme this week. Basically, that it's never been done before in the NFL. Like, he took a concept from college, he built it out, built upon heavy pressure, heavy drop coverage, and a lot of zone concepts mixed with blitz, which is very unique. Did you guys see this story? Because I thought it was
I thought it was so great. I mean,
it broke my brain in half,
dude. It was like here's the chart. Like anything Arif Hassan writes for sure, but then that piece by Kevin Seifert. If you're a Vikings fan and you only read one piece all year, for me and my money, I think this is it. It was so good.
What's really interesting is that the Vikings borrowed a bunch of Narduzzi principles when he was at Michigan State for the Mike Zimmer defense. And so to see...
they keep doing this.
Yeah, Brian Flores do the same thing.
Different principles too.
Yeah, completely
totally different stuff. Because Narduzzi's not doing the same thing in Pitt as he did in Michigan
100%,
State.
right? I mean, because that's so like one of the reasons that cover 4 is so prevalent in the NFL right now is because of what Narduzzi did at Michigan State. The way that they did match cover 4, put in blitz packages. The idea, of course, was that you would have a too high safety look that also allowed you to defend the run, which is pretty unique. If you remember, that Michigan State team was phenomenal on defense, and part of the reason is because very good at defending the run while still having a 2 safety look. It screwed up all of the like teams like Oregon that relied on box counts to determine whether or not they were going to run, i.e. counting the number of defensive players in the box, determining run or pass based off of that. It was kind of like the thing to do. That's how Gus Malzahn did it at Auburn. That's how, Chip Kelly did it at Oregon. And it was very difficult to stop until somebody was like, hey, what if we could defend the run without a high box count? Which, of course, leads to the Fangio stuff that people have talked about, where you've got too high safeties. You should be able to defend the run from a light box because you've got Aaron Donald, that kind of stuff, right? And so Zimmer borrowed a lot of the match principles, which is why drafting Trey Waynes made thematic sense. It didn't make sense to like draft him based off of the player that he was, but it made thematic sense because it was, the 2 read stuff coming out of Michigan State is like the stuff that worked a lot for NFL defenses. So Brian Flores borrowing from Narduzzi at Pitt is super interesting because it's not unique to have like zone principles behind a blitz, but it is unique to do it behind kind of a 6-person blitz, right? Because if you've got fire zone, that's like very old, rush 5, you've got 3 over 3. So that's 3 deep, 3 short. That's been there for a while, right? The Steelers innovated zone blitz way back when, right? Doing a bunch of that stuff. But having like a 4-person kind of like a fence post zone with 1 underneath and then having like 6 rushers, that's unique, right? The amount of player control that there is in the defense is fairly unique, right? For a defense as difficult for quarterbacks to kind of absorb, having players have the ability to understand the defense well enough that they can make their own decisions up front, that's unique, right? What's really cool is that I remember when Narduzzi was interviewed about that Michigan State defense, the thing is, I'm very open about all of the things that I do except my blitz packages. That is not in any clinic. I will not talk about it. No one is going to know how my blitz packages work. That's like secret third down sauce you're not going to get. And now, like, we've built a plane out of it. It's so interesting that this is kind of so I encourage people to read the piece, but that is like the context to that defensive history that I found like really kind of cool to bring into that piece. I think it's so cool.
Good breakdown there by Ari. I love the Harrison Smith quote in there too about when he said, something about these rules, these pre-notions more or less are just ingrained in everyone's head right now after so many years.
Yeah.
Just been
there's 3
kind of
4s and there's 4
brainwashed.
3s.
Yeah, exactly. It's been kind of brainwashed into that group think, and that's where Flores came in, flipped everything on its head and said, screw this. You know what? There is more than one way to do this. And yeah, it's going to be a huge challenge, a big transition, and we saw that the first 4 weeks of the season. But if we can get the communication part down, gel together, hashtag chemistry, over time, it is going to be something that gives offenses a huge headache. And, dude, if nothing else, too, after what fans got from Donatel last year, you got to appreciate and respect the fact he was willing to come in and do something that was really outside the box, swing for the fence, installs this just ultra aggressive mindset that's never been done literally in the history of the NFL. That was a huge risk. So props to him. It's been so fun to watch. And also, too, think about how funny is it now looking back to training camp and all the buzz around Josh Metellus. Oh, man, he's using a lot of 3 safety looks out there. That's kind of weird. I wonder how much he's actually going to use it, though, in the season. And by the way, where's Lewis Cine if he's going to use 3 safety? Well, he literally uses 3 safety every single play. He's turned Metellus into a legitimate Pro Bowl type of player. So, or how about, I think back to this, too, training camp, preseason time. Every time a defensive player was asked about the defense, and Arif, you kind of mentioned this, every player would just kind of get this smile and get soft-spoken about all the details, very tight-lipped. Every time a reporter asked about the nuances, a player was just like, yeah, man, it's crazy. I don't know what to tell you. You'll find out. You'll see. Like, no details. And now we know why, because this was just something that was, again, really outside the box, had the potential, though, to be super successful. And they didn't want to give out any secrets, any of the secret sauce, like Arif said.
Little Monday nerdy stat before we kick it to Braun. The Vikings have the top 2 safeties in the league in terms of pass rush attempts Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus have 86 and 70 pass rush snaps, respectively.
Rocks so hard.
Next closest is Kyle Duggar at 39. Less than half.
Who's worked with Flores?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot. Nice. It's still like a lot of the defense's DNA is still Belichick. The 5-0 stuff that they do, like the fronts that they have. And I think it's the coverage behind it that is more the part that they took out of the Pitt playbook. But there's a couple things from that article that stand out to me in terms of how other teams have interacted with the Vikings. There's a story from Metellus from the Atlanta game of a coach
that was good.
Calling out the defensive plays and being like, I know what you're doing, and being wrong every single time.
It's an illusion.
And then another anecdote from Durante Jones about coaches coming up to him before the game and saying, man, you're the DB coach. You guys are running so much man coverage. That must be really hard. To have to be in man to man all the time with the guys that you have. And, and he'll kind of like smile and say, oh yeah, thanks for that. But he's like, it's not man coverage. Like what we do is not, it looks like man, but it's not man coverage. I think a lot of it is still man match cover 7 on the backside, which is just a set of rules that becomes man coverage, but it's not actually, you have this guy, it's you have whichever guy comes to the outside or to the inside, etc.
Pockets. Harrison Smith called it. There's these pockets on the field, right? More or less.
Yeah. Right. So you'll have like on one side of the field, 3 defenders over 2 receivers or whatever. And then 4 over 3 on the other side. And then there'll be a certain rule set. It's what Mike Zimmer did as well. It's what Belichick does. So it's really funny to see that. And when they have their off man thing that you probably can picture in your mind about like all of the defensive backs, heels on the sticks, playing way off with, 7 or 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, where that looks like off man coverage, but it also kind of isn't, where it's very much, you can switch release all you want. You can move guys around. You can bring guys across the formation, and there's always going to be someone there because they actually are playing like 3 deep, 2 under zone behind it, which is the part that they took from Pitt. There's so many cool, interesting things about this, but I do just want to appreciate that, like, how often ever in football do you get a team that just runs a new scheme that doesn't exist somewhere else, that isn't, just something that is what they taught at the place they were before, right? Like, we always take it for granted. Hey, when we're getting Flores, we all went and, okay, what's the Belichick defense? Because that's what he runs. He runs the Belichick defense. When we had Donatel, he runs the Fangio defense. What's the Fangio defense? And to sort of veer so far away from it while still having a lot of the same DNA, to veer so far away from it and to sort of concoct something that looks entirely new and unrecognizable, that never happens. Like, this team is a pilot ground for a brand new thing. And if it works out, it's going to spread and catch on like wildfire. And people are going to talk about the 2023 Vikings the same way they talk about I think it was the 1995 Browns, where man match cover 7 was invented. It might have been 94 with Belichick.
Was that Belichick?
And Saban. Yeah,
Belichick and Saban. And like, there were like new defensive back techniques they used. They invented the shuffle to take over the back pedal and stuff like that. There's like
and keep in mind, that was a 5-11 team. But it changed the entire league.
Right.
So whatever happens with the 2023 Vikings is going to fall into so much more obscurity. Their legacy might be, this is where Flores invented I saw somebody suggest they should call it the 44 defense after Metellus.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
That's
I like that.
Great.
Yeah, just like the Doug Plank 46.
I've got a guessing game. Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, how funny in that article was it reading that Brian O'Neill and Patrick Jones, the 2 former Pit players, couldn't make any
they were
connection.
like, what is going on here?
Well,
they didn't realize until they're like, oh my God, that's...
like, wait a minute.
Hey,
what are you doing?
I do want to add,
I think would have had that in college, would have practiced against that defense.
I do want to add, Sam, right before we get into the guessing game or whatever, is that I think it was Match Quarters wrote a piece. I also did a video on Brian Flores defense 2-3 weeks ago. I highly recommend it. Where I believe it was Match Quarters who said that the Vikings lead the league in rotations too high from single high, where most of the league does rotations from too high to single high. As opposed to the other way around, right? And so the Vikings will show 1 high and rotate to 2 more often than anyone else. even though they don't do too high all that often. It's just that no one seems to rotate from single high safety pre-snap to double high safety post-snap. Whereas the meta around the league, because of Fangio, is to have these too high looks before the snap. Something that O'Connell and Donatel talked about before the season last year, right? That they would always show pre-snap too high, and then they'll do whatever after that. Turns out whatever was also too high.
Turns out they just didn't do that at all.
Yeah, they just didn't rotate. But if it's Staley or Fangio or Desai or any of these other guys, it would be you show too high and then you rotate a bunch to single high. And it seems like the Vikings are kind of at the other end of that. Just kind of a cool detail.
Vikings top 5 since week 4 in points against, yards against, success rate, and EPA defensively. Do you guys want to guess? So the Vikings have jumped 20 spots in total defense this year. It is the second greatest jump in team history. Do you want to guess number 1?
2014.
I'm going to guess like 13
Correct.
or 14?
Luke got
Okay.
it. Yep.
Yeah.
From last to 11th with the Zimmer defense,
Yeah,
which
that was
goes
crazy.
to show that scheme on defense in particular really matters
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Did he go get Linval that first year, 2014?
Yeah.
Because that had a lot to do with finding that nose
Linval
tackle.
was also not like elite Linval that first year, correct? Because he got shot before.
Yeah,
the
he was coming
season.
off the
He
bullet.
Yeah.
missed a lot of time. Yeah.
coming off the bullet,
man.
Like he got healthy toward the end of the year. Rhodes turned the corner toward the end of that year. Sharif Floyd, like everyone kind of started to gel late that season after it was kind of all lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Sharif
2015
Floyd was so good, man. Sharif
20
Floyd
yeah.
was
So good, dude. Who's the 2 Penn State linebackers? Gerald Hodges and Michael Mauti?
Michael Mauti didn't really see the field. Come on,
Well,
we
come
can't.
on, dude. Ben Gideon, come on, dude.
But yeah, Gerald
Gideon.
Hodges before he got like randomly traded to the 49ers, and we're all like, what was that about?
What?
That's crazy.
What happened?
Oh, this Eric Kendricks is going to take over for him? What?
Got Nick Easton.
That had a lot to do. I mean, 2014,
Hey.
he goes from dead last to 11th, but then that 2015 draft adding Trey Waynes, Eric Kendricks, and Daniil Hunter.
Daniil Hunter.
I mean, those three right
Anthony
there.
Harris,
yeah,
an undrafted free agency.
Yep,
Stephon
absolutely.
Diggs. Michael
Yep,
Pruitt
Jaron
was in that
Kearse.
draft class.
A couple years
Michael
later.
Pruitt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spielman turned Matt
the one that got
Castle,
away.
Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pruitt.
He drafted Michael Pruitt 3 spots before Stephon Diggs. Can you imagine if Stephon Diggs would have got sniped in those 3 spots?
Whew.
Woo, baby!
Hey, Michael Pruitt's still in the league. That was
He's
like,
still,
He
yeah,
scored a
he's
touchdown
doing
yesterday.
Touchdown.
He scored a touchdown yesterday.
Falcons
he's
legend.
exceeding his 5th round valuation, though I would not argue that means the Vikings made a good pick, right? Like it's kind of
That's fair. That's fair.
They
Closing
ruined their
thought
own
here.
success. They just needed
real
to be a
quick.
little more patient with it.
Closing thought. Sam, I'm just thinking back to training camp too. Thinking about this for me, anyways. Reading this article, really, what opened up my eyes the most. Like, I have more appreciation for the back end and what Flores has done with those guys' communication and disguising things like that. But think back to training camp. Put yourself there. It was a coin flip to bring back Daniil Hunter. And even though I know the philosophy and the whole thing just kind of breeds and schemes open different pass rushers, we talk about that a lot on any given play. Having that one Pro Bowl guy down there, that one Pro Bowl presence down the line of scrimmage in both pass and run support, I don't think that can be overstated. I mean, that's been crazy to think about what maybe they would have looked like had they not retained Daniil Hunter and kept him in purple.
Yeah, right. With the injuries Marcus Davenport's dealt
Davenport?
with. Yeah, can you imagine? It would be Andre Carter, DJ
God.
One, and Patrick Jones. Those would be your
Well,
top
one of
3.
the interesting things that has gone to that is it's in the Seifert piece too is like 6-man fronts. It's zone coverage behind a 6-man front is like the novel thing about this. And in the same way that like 5 down fronts have sort of put a wrench in the engine of all of the wide zone offenses, and that was sort of the reason that Fangio defenses took off, is because they liked to put 5 on the line of scrimmage, and it would break up the double teams that wide zone loves to have, because there's too many guys. You can't double team everybody. Everybody has to be one-on-one. And teams just started using like tight ends and fullbacks to like get that math back in their favor. That's what the 49ers have been doing. And part of the reason this worked against the 49ers run game is because 6 is 1 more than 5. And so now the math is even more back in the Vikings' favor. And that it's like a super oversimplification, because how you get away with having 6 guys on the line of scrimmage and not getting passed on is kind of insane. And they did get passed on a couple times. Like after the Chargers game, they kind of went back to the drawing board and changed their coverage structures. But it's a really cool kind of cat and mouse between offense and defense the last like 5-6 years as McVay sort of broke the whole world wide open.
So
it's been kind of fun for like Luke and I to tweet each other. Yeah, they'll only rush 6 or 3. That's it.
6 or 3.
Yeah, 6 or 3 for like the past couple of weeks. And then this article comes out and it's like, yeah, statistically, they rush 6 the most. They also rush 3 the most.
I love that.
Just like,
which has been true for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's so cool.
I love that.
Let me end with a conspiratorial thought. This was Brian Flores's when he spoke to Seifert. This was his first head coaching interview. Because why would this defensive coordinator who's got this scheme nobody can figure out, why would he suddenly just open up the book and let us look in? Oh, he's starting the PR hype now. He's starting the Brian Flores hype train today. So
normally I would push back, Sam, when you put forth a conspiracy. Not going to do that here. I think you've got some legs on this one.
Seems wise.
I am curious as to why Durante Jones contributed to the piece, but
he probably wants to go with. He has been through some weird scheme changes because he's been here. He was here in a Zimmer year, right?
Yeah,
and then he was here last year with the Fangio thing. It was a catastrophe.
And he worked with Paul Gunther in Cincinnati too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He's been through a bunch of different schemes.
He might be part of the Flores staff now, because this is how it goes, right? Like if Flores does get a head coaching job, he brings this scheme over there. The Vikings still probably try to run it here with whoever, and then people start getting poached off of both of those staffs, and it spreads that way. So if this does work out, Durante Jones has some pretty good opportunities to get promotions
I
via.
think he gets the DC job. In Minnesota. I think that's what
I could see it. Yeah.
If he doesn't choose to go,
that's for sure.
That's why he's
talking to Clemson this morning.
If he doesn't choose to go follow Flores wherever he goes,
right? Yeah, those are basically.
He's a DC either way, though. Yeah. Do you want to do it with Flores?
I do think it's unlikely the Vikings lose Flores this year, despite all of the wonderful stories about the defense and all the success and stuff like that. Just because, because Flores has to be like, if you were Flores and you could theoretically have a pick of teams, would you choose Carolina? Probably not. Yeah. But also, I still think owners are probably a little bit skittish about hiring a guy who's currently suing the NFL. That's not going to leave my brain until he actually signs with the team.
I agree.
So that's part of it, right?
And for people with a quality opening that have their pick of the litter, right? Like Arizona offered Brian Flores the job last year. They were kind of desperate. It's easier to look past that, especially when you're the Cardinals. Like, what's another media circus?
Can you imagine Jonathan Gannon surviving a fair interview process against qualified?
I was gonna say, who's the second hottest DC out there right now? Because I want to know how big the drop off is. Because Flores clearly the hottest name right now. Who's the second? Does anybody know?
Probably
Desai.
Anaromo is a good one, but he's old, so
he is,
so that's gonna hurt. Old. But Sean Desai, I think, is up there.
Okay.
I will say, Sam, you probably remember this better than all of us, but Andre Patterson would do this a lot, where he'd find ways to try and get his name out there. It's hey, I'm doing a pretty good job, guys. I just want you to know I'm doing a pretty good job. It's important that everyone knows that I'm doing a good job.
Patterson.
What you do with that information, that's up to you. But I am doing a pretty
one of the
good
only
job.
bright spots in New York still. All that dude does is coach up good players. He should have been a DC a decade ago.
Yeah, he agrees.
Yeah. Shamar Stephan, his prize project. Let's talk a little AOC. Aiden O'Connell, of course, and little Raiders preview after a word from Game Time. After this show, I'm hopping in an Uber. I'm going to the airport, and I'm flying to New York. Yes, I will be in NYC, the Big Apple, city that never sleeps. And what is there to do in the Big Apple? Well, there's a lot of sporting events. There's a lot of shows. So you know what I did last night? Hopped on the Game Time app. Yep, downloaded it, checked it out, and saw that Kenny G is playing in New York City tonight. So a little smooth jazz for my Monday evening, you bet. Courtesy of Game Time, where you find the best flash deals, sponsored deals for concerts, zone deals where you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats for 18% savings on average. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find the tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time gives you credit 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app like I did. Doesn't have to be Kenny G. It can be a local Wolves game. It can be a Wild game. Create your account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Locked on NFL, like I did, for $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Kenny G, coming your way, man.
Kenny G, of course, man.
All right, you can make fun of me now for the Kenny G thing.
That's extremely funny, soft jazz, but I don't want to knock him too much. He has pioneered stuff like continuous breathing, which I believe is the reason he holds the record for like the longest note on a brass instrument in history. It turns out like musicians I like a lot respect him, which is crazy to me because I think his music blows. But you know, that's just how it works.
Sustained for a long time.
The HBO Music Box series did a documentary on Kenny G with a lot of Kenny G in it. And he's a really interesting. He's a really interesting guy. Very perfectionistic, and very confident, like in his own abilities. And he's like, yeah.
He's like very well respected. Like when I learned about him, I was like shocked because again, his music sucks, but people like him. He's pioneered a bunch of stuff in the realm of smooth jazz, I guess. Well, also just like music techniques. We should get Yinka on here to talk about Kenny G. I would be.
Oh yeah, that would be great Vikings content.
Is he a fan or a hater?
I don't know, but Yinka knows a lot about the mechanics of playing brass instruments, and so probably knows a lot about Kenny G.
So this is not a politics show, but we're talking AOC because it's Aiden O'Connell.
My eyes lit up. God, come on.
I know you got pumped. Aiden O'Connell, 6 games in. My one little fun nugget on that, he literally has 0 undesigned runs through 6 games. He is not a scrambler.
He's coming off his best game as a starter via PFF grades, his highest completion percentage as well. This Raiders team reminds me a little bit of 2021, where they're at right now. Same vibes. They fired Gruden, put in
Bisaccia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Packers special teams coordinator.
Oh, is he? Okay. Kind of that in-season replacement ended up being really competitive near the end. And you kind of see that sometimes when you get these temporary player coaches come in, Antonio Pierce, guys kind of rally around them. I know they're 2-2, but they've done some better things. And all of a sudden, at least they're more competitive again. They scored the most points they have all year in his first game. I think it was 30 points. Sure as the Giants. Now they lost to the Dolphins on the road, but only by 1 score 2 weeks ago. The big wild card right now, Max Crosby. I mean, he's a player who's going to get Defensive Player of the Year votes. He was listed as doubtful this week, comes into the week, brutal knee injury, ends up playing somehow. He can be a huge game wrecker, obviously. I think all eyes are going to be on Max Crosby this week as well, whether he goes or not, because, again, he can be a huge difference maker.
Yeah, this is a really interesting... Sorry, this is an interesting week to get Max Crosby because... Kevin O'Connell, our O'Connell, has alluded a little bit to molding the offense around Josh Dobbs a little more. And there was a report from Diana Rossini that says her vibe is that they're sticking with Dobbs. That feels like the odds-on favorite right now, although we don't have certainty by any means. But if they do, I wouldn't be surprised to see some QB running, some zone read stuff. What a great time to bust out some zone read for a team that absolutely is not going to prepare for that and essentially read Max Crosby out of plays. What a great way to get Max Crosby neutralized in this game by making him the read man, making it so you don't have to like beat him one-on-one when he's having the season of his life. And that won't work. Like that's too simple of a solution for a team that sees it coming, but we don't have any of that crap on tape. It would be brand new. It would be a nice way to handle probably the best edge rusher left on the slate, right?
Oh, you going to the game, Luke?
I am going to the game.
Oh, like driving down, or
my dad and I are going to drive up to Vegas.
Where are you staying?
I love that highway, man. The LA
to Las Vegas
highway
on the strip.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty drive. No, just off it.
So Max Crosby currently leads the league in PFF pressures. He also leads the league in PFF stops because during the bye week, Danielle Hunter lost his lead in stops. I believe Hunter still leads the league in like tackles for loss, but stops can also occur on 1, 2, 3 yard gains depending on the down and distance. Also, for most of his career, he has led the league in pass rush wins. Right now, that's not the case because he had to take a couple of plays off for the first time in his life. I believe Micah Parsons and Hassan Reddick are ahead of him in pass rush wins, but he's third in pass rush wins total, and his pass rush win rate, as usual, is pretty high. He is everybody agrees he's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, and yet he is still underrated. It is like an interesting kind of thing. People talk more about the fact that he like plays every snap until like very recently, and like how hard he works, which I mean those are like true things, right? And they sometimes even talk more about his story, recovering from alcoholism and finding like a new purpose and a new animating driving force, also great, than they do to talk about like the level of talent that he brings to bear in every aspect of the game. He is an incredible player who has not had help. They don't have a defensive line like outside of him. Like it is crazy. I'm also going to count him as a win because I liked him in the draft. So that means I'm good at this. He says, hey, I like this 5th round guy. Turns out he's very good. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be kind of the focal point of how that defense works, how the offense needs to design itself. But you wanted to talk a little bit about Aiden O'Connell. He had a really remarkable preseason. I liked his preseason a lot. He was one of the best rookie quarterbacks. Also up there, Tyson Bagent of all people. But he was somebody that I liked in the draft. But his play has been extremely up or down, which is fair. He's like a mid-round rookie. But his play has been extremely up and down. Like Luke said, against a very good Kansas City defense that was healthier in that game than it was right. Last night, he played very well, but also against a Miami defense that admittedly looks very good now that Jalen Ramsey is healthy and back. He looked awful. The game before that, he looked very bad. He's been an interesting player, but he's kind of like your classic like statue, like you mentioned, anticipatory thrower, relies on accuracy, not as much on arm strength, but more on, reading defenses, anticipating where everybody's going to be open and trying to get there, which I think pairs very poorly against the Brian Flores defense. If I'm going to be honest, I think that
turns you into a PJ Fleck offense, which is what the Vikings have done to a lot of young quarterbacks. I pulled up his PFF page, which is a great thing to do for a team you have not watched. And yeah, when blitzed, depth of target goes down, completion percentage goes up, things like their big time throw and all that stuff and their turnover worthy plays all completely disappear. If he sees pressure, he's dumping the ball off to his check down, which is exactly what Brian Flores wants.
The Vikings are very good at defending that.
Yeah, the Vikings been very, very good at defending that, except for like one drive in Denver where they
and one drive in San Francisco.
Pain.
I don't remember that one, but sure, yeah.
The drive in Denver was more impactful, admittedly.
Denver tried.
I've forgotten that other drive, but I'll take your word for it.
The San Francisco one was like, oh my God, is it over? Can they not defend screens? And then they could.
Oh, it was the 3-play one where McCaffrey housed it. Yeah, that one. Yeah. They've been really great about all that stuff. So if that's the way that the Raiders are going to approach this, and they're just going to kind of compress their offense into something that you would see in the Big Ten, then yeah, it's going to be another long day for the offense, which we've had like 3 of those in a row now.
If you haven't seen the line yet or the over-under, guess the line.
2.5.
Minus 3.5 for the Vikings.
I have seen it, so I won't guess.
All right. You guys are sandwiched around it. It is 3 over-under. You want to guess that?
42.
What?
Whoa.
42.5.
Crazy.
Yeah.
40.5 is the number.
Ooh,
wow. Okay. Wow.
That would be about a 22-19 Vikings win per Vegas.
Should be noted, scoring is down across the league. Scoring is lower than it's been over the past, I believe, 5 years. But also, there's a game this week, I forget which game, that has the lowest over-under we've seen since like 2008.
Does that have to do with the Patriots?
That would make sense.
Patriots Steelers 30.
I was about to say, I think it has to do with the
God.
Steelers. And the Steelers
30 and a half.
And it's a Thursday night game.
It's a Thursday night game.
Al Michaels is going to walk out of the booth.
It's going to feel like betting on an Iowa game. You're like, surely,
always covered.
Surely the under can't hit.
Covered.
It's too low this time.
Yeah, it's
just not even a sweat.
2 weeks ago, Iowa, Nebraska, 23.5 and the under hit 23.
And it wasn't close, right?
It was 23.
It was 23.
Oh, it was 23. It was close.
But still.
I think that Al Michaels will find ways to enjoy his evening with the help of a couple of substances.
And
he needs something that he can slyly talk about without really talking about, because it doesn't work the same when talking about betting.
Yeah. Now that betting is like out in the open.
Like, and he's still like, some viewers really.
Some people
like, you don't have to be underhanded about this, Al.
That meaningless field goal mattered to some people out there.
He needs to call up Chris Berman and get some of those do-do-do's.
What? My favorite clip ever. I bring that up to Sam once a year.
Give you that extra pop.
From the States, eh?
We always hope we get a Blue Jays game.
Just because I got the Aiden O'Connell PFF grades up here, I forgot his first start, week 4. Do you guys remember this? First, the Chargers dropped back 46 times. That was the Khalil Mack 6-sack game. At least 5, maybe 6. Sacked 7 times though. Pressured on almost half his dropbacks.
Okay, talk about underrated pass rushers this year. Khalil Mack is having an insane. I've had to cover the Chargers for the past 5 weeks. Khalil Mack is having an insane year. It is crazy how good
is Bosa out?
Oh. Yeah, he's out. He's done.
Okay.
I saw Kendricks pop a lot yesterday, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual. He's not been having a great year. But
wearing number 6.
Yeah, very weird. Yeah.
Very weird.
But yeah, their second round pick, Tuli Tuipulotu, having a great year too. So
yes.
That's helping absorb the Joey Bosa loss.
And you talked about Max Crosby being underrated. Kind of comes with the whole realm of, all right, he's not on a good team, doesn't get a lot of, national games, primetime games, things like that. Tyree Wilson, how about, here's the top 10 pick that's supposed to come help out, at least in the pass rush game. Not good, dude. Not good.
Dude, it took until like week 5 or something like that for him to have one pass rush win. Not even a pressure.
That's insane.
A pass rush, like to beat a tackle, it took him like 4 or 5 weeks.
I don't know how that happens. And then they drafted the D tackle, Byron Young from Tennessee. I can't speak
Byron
on
Young.
him.
They drafted the wrong. No, they drafted the wrong Byron
yes,
Young.
they did. Yeah, the Alabama. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We got to go. We got to go. This was a great show. All right, it's over.
Sam's gonna miss his flight.
This is Locked On Chargers. Locked On Sports Minnesota, the Minnesota football party. Back with you on Thursday. Ron Johnson will join. We'll make our parlays. Nobody won yesterday. And Luke Braun is way in the negative, so
in trouble.
Yep, lost it on Thursday.
Me.
For Luke Inman, Luke Braun, Arif Hassan, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Saying so long. You're on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thanks for watching and listening.